Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In this video we're going to be looking at OS and service fingerprinting. So we've gone through information gathering and we have gathered some very important information. So we have gathered DNS information, we have gathered the IP addresses that we have required about the target or IP addresses that belong to the target. We have found the open ports and identified them to the network or the target, as you have seen in the previous video when we did it to our Metasploitable 2 virtual machine, which is acting as our web server. So we've gathered DNS information, we've got IP addresses, we've got the open ports. Now we need to find or determine what operating systems and services are running on these systems so that we know what type of systems we're penetration testing or we're performing the penetration test against. So again, it is really about gathering as much information as possible about a target, and this time we need to find out what operating system the server or our target is running and what services are also running, what versions of the services are running, and we're going to be using Nmap for this. Alright, so again we're going to be utilizing Metasploitable 2, and this is what we're going to be using because it acts as a fantastic representation of how a web server can be exploited. So let's get started. So we already know the IP address of the Metasploitable 2 virtual machine. As you can see, it may be different for you, and that really doesn't matter. All you need to do is get the local IP address because we are doing this locally on our virtual lab. Alright, so we're just going to open up our terminal, and this was the previous scan result, so I'm just going to clear this up. Alright, now we can get started. So as I've mentioned, we are performing OS and service fingerprinting, which is essentially operating system and service fingerprinting. Now Nmap has a feature that is able to scan, and it will scan for operating systems on your target. So let's do this. So we use the Nmap command. Now we're using the O parameter, but it's going to be a capital O. Alright, so it is the O parameter. We then specify the IP address, so 192.168.1.106, and once we hit enter, it's going to perform the Nmap scan. Alright, it's going to give us the timestamp, and now we have additional information. Alright, so in the previous video when we performed the basic scan, it's going to scan for all the open ports, no doubt about that. But in this case, since we have added the O parameter right here that scans for operating systems, or actually detects the operating system running on the server or the target, it's going to return some more information at the bottom here. So it's going to give you information here. So running, it is running Linux 2.6, so it's running a Linux 2.6 kernel. The operating system is Linux, it's running the Linux kernel, there we are. So 2.6, and the OS details is Linux 0.9, and it gives you more information. Now this information is vitally important, especially when you're looking at it from a penetration tester, from a penetration testing standpoint, and also from an attacker's standpoint, because you can find specific vulnerabilities that are in line or are in tune with this version of Linux, you know, given the fact that it is quite an outdated version. But that aside, we have been able to gather information about the operating system, which is vitally important. So we're gathering a lot of information now, and we're really moving on. Okay, now I just want to show you that this does exist in the help menu. Alright, so if I just open up the Nmap help menu and we look for the O command, which there we are, OS detection, it has its own section. When we use the O command, this enables the operating system detection. Right, so we've detected the operating system that is running, and we know it's Linux, alright, and more specifically it's running the Linux 2.6 kernel. Right, now what we need to do now is we need to perform service fingerprinting, which is equally as important. Alright, so this will determine the services running on specific ports. Alright, and this will really determine how good your penetration test success rate is going to be. Alright, so let's get started now. To perform service fingerprinting, we use the Nmap command, and we use the S and capital V parameter, which we'll be looking at in the Nmap help menu in a few seconds. Alright, so 192.168.1.106. Fantastic. Now once we hit enter, it's going to perform the scan. It's going to take relatively longer than the other scans because this is now, you're really focusing the scan down. Fantastic. There we are. We have information now. This is critically important because these all act as an attack vector, and I'm going to explain how. As we'll be moving along through the course, we're going to be looking at exploiting a system, alright, and these are going to be very useful attack vectors. Now, for example, if we look at the results it's given us, we have a whole new table here the version table. Alright, so this is essentially the version of the software of the service that is running on the port. So let's take an example. Let's say we have the port 21, which is an FTP port. It is running VSFTPD 2.3.4. Let me just copy this and open this in my browser, and I'm just going to paste this, and I'm going to say VSFTPD 2.3.4 exploits. Alright, I'm just going to search for exploits. Simple as that. I'm just going to do a normal search engine search, and immediately the first link is taking us to the Rapid7 website, which is essentially going to give us a Metasploit exploit that we can use with the MSF console. As you can see, VSFTPD version 2.3.4 backdoor command execution. So already we have found that this service or this service fingerprinting scan has given us the services, and we have found a vulnerability already with one of these services. And this already poses as a fantastic attack vector that one would really look at. And again, you can look at all the other ones. For example, we have the Apache, which we can see is running a remote web server. We then have the MySQL, PostgreSQL, VNC protocol, which is also very, very tempting. If you use tools like Hydra to brute force the VNC credentials, you can get VNC access, which is also equally as important, or actually very, very powerful as an attack. So as you can see, we have got the services that are running on the web server, which more specifically is the Metasploitable virtual machine. And this is really, really fantastic. And now, as you can see, we have learned how to perform operating system fingerprinting and also service fingerprinting. And now we know what operating system the server is running on, and we know what versions of the services that are running on the ports of the web server in which we are trying to target. So that's going to be it for this video. In the next video, we'll be looking at how to use Multigo for information gathering, which is also a very, very important tool. So I'll be seeing you in the next video.